Hello and welcome to UC Berkeley's Latinx Across Careers Alumni panel. I want to thank everyone so much for joining us today. We have an awesome panel of esteemed alumni here to speak to you about their experiences on and off campus during and after graduation. So without further ado, I want to pass it over to Dr. Maggie Alvendares, our moderator for this evening, who will start with some introductions and then we'll jump right into the panel. Thank you so much. Also, if you do have any questions for our panelists today, please use the chat function below for all of your questions. Okay, take it away, Maggie. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. Good evening, everyone. Buenas tardes a todos. Thank you for joining us. We're very, very happy to be here. As Amanda shared, I'm Maggie Alvendares. I'm a very proud alumna from the class of 2009. I was a psychology and sociology double major with a minor in education, originally from Compton, California. I reside in Compton, California. So I'm very proud to represent my community. Now, I was a school counselor for just over 7 years, and now lead and facilitate and support to school counselors for Green Dot Public Schools in Los Angeles, California. So I work with 19 different schools. I'm so very excited to be here and share with my colleagues more around our Cal experience. So I will go ahead and have the rest of the panel introduce themselves, and I will start with Carlos.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carlos Alvendares. From the class of 2003. I was a history major in the College of Letters and Sciences. I'm from Los Angeles and I currently live in Los Angeles, although I absolutely love the Bay Area and I lived there from 1999 to 2013. So I spent a good portion of my adult life in the Bay Area, and yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. My parents are from El Salvador. I was a freshman admin, and I'm currently a labor law attorney, and I'm basically an advocate for workers, labor unions, and organizations that promote better wages and benefits for workers. And my law degree is from UCLA.
Thank you, Carlos. I now like to welcome Mitzi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mitzi Iniguez. I graduated in 2009 with a double major in social welfare and Chicano studies with a minor in education. I came into Cal as a first generation student through directly out of high school. And I originally went to a public high school that was in a very low income area of Oakland, California. While I was at Cal, I was part of a lot of different organizations and clubs. And that's where also I gained my love and interest for school counseling. So I actually decided to be a high school counselor for a while, but actually transitioned to working back at Cal for a program called EOP, Education Opportunity Program, working with first generation low income students of color. So I worked there for about a decade, and I've transitioned to doing more work with diversity in tech. So I helped a lot of women of color get jobs and internships at different tech companies. And now I work doing growth mindset work with middle schools, high schools, and universities all across the nation.
Thank you, Mitzi. I'd like to welcome Christopher.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Palacios. I graduated in 2019, so class of 2019. I majored in political science, and I work as a management consultant for a company called Wood O'Brien's, helping people secure emergency rental assistance through the CARES Act during this COVID-19 epidemic. And I was really involved at the International House, where I was an RA and on student council. I was the first generation to go to school in my family. I was a re-entry student, and just love everything about Cal. And I grew up in Ventura County, California, where I still reside. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Christopher. And last but not least, Emily, welcome.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily. I just graduated this May, so I'm class of 2021. I'm from Northern California, specifically Rohnert Park, and I'm living in San Francisco now. My major was interdisciplinary major within the College of Letters and Science, but I actually started out as a poli-sci major. So I had a career shift in the middle of my college years. And now I am an operations executive at my startup called Queenly here in San Francisco.
Thank you, Emily. Welcome, everyone, and thank you again for joining us. I do want to say to everyone joining us, we're all volunteers, so we're here to be as candid as can be around our experience at the university. Obviously, Berkeley means a lot to us, and that's why we continue to come back and participate in these different spaces, because we want to share about our experience and what Berkeley has to offer. And we're very, very excited to also be able to articulate more around the resources and the services that helped us get to where we're at now as a result of our time at Cal. So I want to start with just asking the panel if you can share with us why Cal? Why did you select Cal as your institution among the many options that you have out there? And I'll go ahead and go in reverse order. So I'll start with Emily.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I came into Cal as a first gen straight out of high school student. I had straight A's. I knew I could basically go where I wanted, but I never really had a dream school. And so at the time when I said, okay, I want to study poli-sci, I thought Cal was the best decision for me. I mean, super diverse in the Bay Area, close to Sacramento. I thought my decision couldn't get any better. And then when I transitioned to business and tech, I realized I definitely made the right decision. That's why I chose Cal.
Thank you, Emily. Christopher?
Like I said, great question. Well, I was a transfer student, like I mentioned. So I had a lot of different possibilities. I can go in California, I could go across the country, but my uncle actually went to Cal. He was an anthropology major and he went to the law school. So I had always had Cal in the back of my mind, so maybe it was a little bit biased, but I knew that they had a wonderful poli-sci program, great diverse campus and resources up in the Bay Area, family in the Bay Area. So it all just kind of connected for me. There were a lot of different factors, but overall, I just thought Cal would be a great place to get an education and kind of be exposed to people from all over the country and all over the world.
Thank you, Christopher. Mitzi?
Yeah, so when I actually applied to Cal, I applied because I had to. I had a high school counselor that was really dedicated and kind of kept me under his wings, and he went to Cal too. So he just knew the potential in me, which I didn't. I was thinking of going somewhere more local. I was thinking CSUs were a little bit better for me, but he saw something in me that I didn't. So actually, when I got accepted to Cal, I almost didn't go because the first thing I saw was the bill, and I, as a low-income family, that wasn't going to be the best option for me. But he and other people really helped me understand my financial aid package, the scholarships that I was receiving, and they really pushed me to accepting my admissions at Cal. So I really didn't know, things that other people really enjoy about being number one in the nation and all the great opportunities there. But once I did attend Cal, I was really able to see, going back to my community in Oakland and wearing, a shirt that I was at Cal, a lot of people in my community were really proud of the achievements of the school that I came from, the community I came from. So I was also doing it for them as well too.
Thank you, Mitzi. And Carlos?
Yeah, why Cal? I mean, Cal was definitely one of the best decisions I've ever made. And it really started in high school. I had several teachers which were Cal alums, and they were all amazing. And they were always talking about Cal. And I just think through that, they just really, nobody else really spoke about their college in the way that Cal alums did. So they really kind of indoctrinated me into the love of Cal. I also went to Cal because I was invited by at the time, I think it's still around, the Raza Retention Recruitment Center. They said, hey, come up here for the weekend, you'll hang out, you get to meet cool people. And I mean, they were great. They were a really great host. And if I'm being honest, I had kind of filled out my paperwork for UCLA thinking I might go there. I wasn't sure, but I'd already filled it out. And then after I came back from the visit, all the stuff that my teachers had said clicked in. I was like, yeah, I love it. And that really kind of sealed the deal for me. We also watched documentaries in high school about the free speech movement in Berkeley. And I was really attracted to that, history of sort of social activism and sort of progressive movements. And also it got me away from my family in LA. It was close enough so I could come down and visit, but far away, so my mom wasn't going to just drive over and try to visit me every single day.
Thank you, Carlos. And you gave a good example, right? You wanted to go to UCLA for a bit, came to Cal, and still went to UCLA after. So you can make both things come true, even if you're kind of toggling between different places. So I do want to ask, since you know, Carlos and Christopher, you both moved from the Southern California area to the Bay Area. If maybe you can speak a little bit to your transition, kind of like what did leaving home mean to you, and kind of what was that transition? Was it challenging? Was it easy? Were you very excited? So whichever one feels ready, I definitely pass it on to you.
I'll go ahead and go first. So my transition, I felt ready to get away from home. I was an older student. Like I said, I was reentry, I was transfer. So I kind of wanted to break away from Ventura County. Like I said, I knew the Bay Area. My family, my dad's family had, lived there their whole lives, and we often went there for Thanksgiving and Christmas. But I was really close to my grandma, on my dad's side. And she was a traditional Mexican grandma. She didn't want me to go from home. She wanted me to stay with her and eat her food and tamales and Alvendares and, stay there and just be her perfect grandson. But she knew that Berkeley was a good place for me to go and a great place for me to start my education. So I was a little bit hesitant though. Even though I was ready to go, I was hesitant leaving my family. I was, really close to them. But everyone knew it was the best for me. So when I got up there, it was a little hard at first because, it's a big school, or it's so different than a community college, which is a lot smaller, and it's a commuter school. You don't have those kind of connections. But I found that it was a really great place for me to transition my education. There were so many more opportunities and different people to meet. So I would say at first I was a little hesitant, to be honest, but then, I found community. I found my place, and I realized that, Berkeley had so much to offer me.
Thank you, Christopher. Go for it, Carlos.
Yeah, the transition was rough. I went to not a particularly great high school. Even though I did well, I thought that the level of students at Berkeley was, high. But I'm thankful to programs like Summer Bridge and EOP. I was a part of Summer Bridge. I don't know if that's still around, but basically it's a program before the fall starts. You take a couple of classes. You kind of get a sense of how the classes work, kind of take notes. So when everyone gets there in the fall, you're already a pro. So I'm really thankful for Summer Bridge. And I really took advantage of a lot of the tutoring that's provided through EOP. And that's something that I always say to people, not to think of EOP as like a stigma, or not to think of any kind of tutoring as a stigma. Really, I actually, I graduated with honors. I think my GPA when I left was like 3.7 something. And I would still go to tutoring. I used tutoring as a way to like raise my grade. So even if I had like an A- in the class, I would still go to tutoring to try to get it to like that A or that A+, which I never got an A+. But yeah, and I would definitely encourage people to use all the resources of a big school. And a lot of people do not go to tutoring. They see it as like some kind of like weird, like you're doing bad. And I wouldn't look at it that way. So I think the transition was tough, but the resources at Berkeley and the different groups I became a part of, I was a part of the Last Summer Attention Recruitment Center, and I would drive down to LA, while I was a student, and try to recruit, fellow, LA high school students to come to Cal. And yeah, all those groups, I was also in a fraternity, all those groups, all that community really was what helped me adapt. And really, I was very happy during my 4 years at Cal. And I'm still friends with a lot of people that I went to Cal with. Friends from Summer Bridge, like we our kids are friends. We're at each other's weddings. Like we're still 20+ years later, are still very, very good friends. So yeah, I said Cal is one of the best decisions I've ever made, and on many levels, has really helped me greatly.
Thank you, Carlos. I also know, for Mitzi and Emily, your transition was a little different because you were closer. So if you can speak a little bit to what that transition was, maybe. I know sometimes also the worry that we hear from students is if I stay close, that means I have to go and still continue to do certain things for my family, or it might be harder to disconnect. So definitely if you can speak a little bit to your transitions respectively. And I welcome whichever one feels ready for that.
Yeah, I can go ahead and go. So actually, it was important for me to stay somewhat close to home. I'm very close with my parents, with my siblings, with my cousins, with my friends from high school that stayed home. So it was important for me, and it was a good decision. I was like an hour away, so I could go home whenever, but I could also stay at Berkeley whenever. And I agree with Carlos. Cal was the best decision. I had probably the best social life in college that I could have ever asked for. So most of the times I didn't want to go home. I wanted to stay and watch the football games with my friends and go to tailgates and go. I mean, you're in the Bay Area. There's so many things to do. So the transition was great. I could go home when I wanted to, but again, I could stay when I wanted to, and there was always something to do.
Yeah, so my experience was a little bit unique. So I actually stayed home. So living in Oakland or Berkeley, it's only about like 20 minutes away. But so I decided to stay home my first year just because I was the first in my family to go to college. I really didn't have many cousins or family members that moved away to go to college. So I thought I could manage being at home actually, and it actually backfired on me too. So my mentally and kind of my environment felt very similar to high school. So I was like, oh, I can work. Oh, I can go to school. I can hang out with my friends. I can do many, many things at the same time. But what I found out was I didn't have different skill sets that I needed for college. So I didn't know how to study. In high school, things were a little bit easier for me. You know, I could talk to my way out of certain things. I could do a lot of different work. But in college, I didn't know like how much I needed to spend studying the library. So I actually ended up being on academic probation after my first semester at Cal too, just because my whole life hadn't transitioned to high school is different than college. So then I had pretty much had to have a conversation with my family and let them know like, okay, I need to be on campus. I need to be able to study, like libraries are open 24 hours. I need to be around other people that have like minds. So that's when I moved the second year to the dorms. And my family understood where I was at and why I was there too. And I didn't go back home as much. I did go back home when I needed to, but it was a transition that they had to experience well. So that when my siblings went through the same experiences, it was something a little bit more normalized in our family.
Thank you, Mitzi, and thank you, everyone. So I kind of want to pivot a little bit, given that part of the panel today is also for us to share a little bit about our own career trajectory and the way that the university helped kind of set that out. So I thought, what better way than to ask you about your first job after Cal, or if you didn't go straight to work, maybe what did you do after Cal, and how did Cal prepare you for either one respectively? So I'll go ahead and start with Mitzi on this.
Yeah, so when I was a senior at Cal, I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was thinking about careers, and I was stressing out a little bit. And then I thought about like who were people that impacted me in my life, and it was my high school counselor, Mr. Padilla. He's like the man. So I wanted to be just like Mr. Padilla. So then I knew I wanted to go to grad school because of that. So I went straight into getting my master's right after my undergrad degree, but I had to work during that same time too. So that's when I started my internship with EOP. So as Carlos and other folks mentioned, so EOP works with, it's in many different campuses. So wherever you decide to go to school, you'll probably find a very similar program that works with first-gen low-income students of color. So I actually interned there during my 3 years of grad school. And when I graduated, they offered me a job to work there. So I ended up working there and I was in the very same office from my very first day to my very last day, almost a decade later too. So just supporting different students coming in, very similar to all of us on the call that come from different experiences, and being able to support students emotionally, academically, emotionally, pretty much giving them holistic support during their whole experience for them and their families being at Cal.
Thank you, Mitzi. I'm going to pass it on to Christopher. So again, either your first job or kind of step, and then how did Cal prepare you for that?
So after Cal, I actually studied abroad my last semester at Cal, which in Tokyo, Japan. So I was trying to get a job in Tokyo, and you know, a lot of things were changing. I didn't know if I wanted to come back to the U.S. or stay there. I actually ended up getting a offer through UC Berkeley Handshake, which is our career center kind of job portal, and for a company called Metadata Solutions. I was doing software implementation. Last year, actually. And it was challenging because it had nothing to do with my major of political science. I actually wanted to work in government, but you know, I was kind of just testing the waters in different consulting positions and wanted to get a feel for this job in tech, since the Bay Area is, you know, this big tech hub. And you know, it was really challenging to put yourself out of get out of the comfort zone of just sticking poli-sci. I think that's what Cal had prepared me for. You know, Cal definitely puts you outside your comfort zone in really great ways. You know, you learn to network and challenge yourself at every different level. And that's how I felt at my first job. I had to learn from scratch a lot of these, you know, coding languages and different systems that were helping develop some of the vaccines for COVID-19. And I really felt that, you know, Cal gave me the opportunity to have an open mind to learning new concepts and ideas. And I don't think I would have got that maybe going to another institution that didn't have so many of these great resources like EOP, like the tutoring center, and being able to network with my professor so closely. So it was a challenge, but it was a great challenge to have my first job as an implementation consultant.
Congratulations,
Thank you.
Christopher. I'll go ahead and pass it on to Carlos.
Yeah, I've been out of school like 18 years now, so I've had a couple of jobs, but I think I have a lot in common with several of the panelists that I also worked in education. I spent basically 10 years out of when I left Cal working in education. First, I was in an elementary school in Oakland in the Fruitvale. And then after that, I worked with high school students in Marin County at San Rafael High School, working predominantly with Latino students on college counseling, essentially. It was great. I loved it. I did it for 10 years. I had always wanted to go to law school, and I just never pulled the trigger. And it wasn't until my wife got a promotion in another part of the country where I was like, well, I have to leave California. So, you know, that was what I sort of needed to do that. But yeah, you know, my love for working with students hasn't stopped. I still volunteer a lot. And it all started at Cal. While I was a student, I was a work study student. So I did tutoring at a local middle school, Willard Middle School. And I just really enjoyed working with students. And even though I could have, you know, had a higher paying job straight out of Cal, you know, I don't regret, you know, the years I spent working in education. And yeah, it was really fulfilling work. And I'm still friends with like a lot of my students, and, you know, have been able to follow their career trajectory. So I'm, you know, really proud of the work that we all did.
Thank you, Carlos. And last but not least, Emily.
Yeah, so when I came in as a freshman, my passion was education and policy. I wanted to work in the Capitol. That's really where I saw myself, and I stuck with that for about 2.5 years at Cal. And then I realized, oh, I kind of I see myself as a businesswoman. And so the way I transitioned that for myself was, you know, it was really important for me to do work within my community. So I was already working with CLYLP, which stands for the Chicano Latino Leadership Project. I had been with them since high school. And so it was still important for me to like be in that community, but I just slowly started to transition into, you know, like the business end of things, like being a social media lead. Same thing with the ASUC on campus. The ASUC on campus is basically like ASB for high school, but on a much larger scale. They have a lot of money and a lot of power to make decisions on campus. And so I was also involved with that, but also was a marketing lead for one of the senators. And then so it was about my third year when I applied to have a marketing internship in the financial district in San Francisco. And so that's when I completely took off, and that's why I changed my major. So I'm still currently in my first job out of college, and it's actually crazy how I got this job because I got it from a class at Berkeley. So I was taking a PR class in Haas, the Haas business class, the Haas business school. And we were doing a consulting project for this startup called Queenly. And at the time it was just the co-founders, so the CEO and the CTO. And I did a consulting project for them. After the fall semester, they were looking for an intern. So my spring semester as a senior at Berkeley, I applied to this. We ended up getting along really well. They hired me as their business development intern, which is technically sales. And I was like, oh my God, I hope they like give me a job offer sometime in April. And they actually offered me a job in February. So I was their first employee ever. So for some time, it was just the three of us, and I started working full time while I was still in school. And that's where I'm currently at right now. And the company has grown from 3 employees to 9 employees, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but it really is. We're a team of women, and it's been great. And one thing that has really been amazing to me is that I'm the only Latina on my team. And when I got my job offer letter, it was a 6-figure salary. And that was really a big deal for my family because no one ever in my whole family has seen that kind of salary. And that's where I'm currently at now.
Congratulations, Emily. That's excellent. I think a lot of us can say our transition was a little different. Yes, definitely congratulations. But that's awesome, especially for a recent graduate. Great job. So you kind of began to touch on this. I definitely want to open it up to some of the other panelists to maybe share either a resource or something you were involved in as part of the Berkeley community that you felt helped you either in your transition out of the university or has just been very informative for you as you have become a professional or grown over the past few years. So I'll open it up to whoever wants to speak first. I know we're all talkers.
Okay, well, Carlos touched on something. He said he was a work study student. I was also a work study student. I worked at the admissions office for all 4 years at Cal, and it was super fulfilling. I got really close to some of my supervisors and also my coworkers who were other students, and it was probably one of the biggest resources for me throughout my 4 years, even like besides my internships and any other activities I did. It was super helpful to be in the admissions office. Everybody was super supportive, and it was really nice to work with other students as well.
Thank you, Emily. Christopher, Carlos, or Mitzi, if either of you want to comment.
Yeah, I already mentioned Summer Bridge and EOP tutoring, but I'll also add counseling. It's tough to figure out what classes to take, which ones, work for a particular major, if you want to switch majors. And even all the information is available online or through a course catalog. It's just really nice to sit down with someone and have them walk you through it. And I took full advantage of that. And I would always talk to my friends and classmates who would be like, oh my God, this is so confusing. I don't understand. And I was like, you can go to counseling and they'll just like help you do it. And they're like, what? And I don't know. People just don't take advantage of that particular resource. So, I would definitely just pick their brains on like, this is what I'm thinking of doing. And, there's different, so like, I'll give you an example of like, just like of a kind of uniqueness of, I was a history major. And for my particular major, you had to do a thesis to graduate. Most majors don't require a thesis. But I was also part of these 2 programs, which I recommend as far as resources. If you want to be a PhD student, is McNair Scholars and Haas Scholars. And I ended up not going the PhD route. But, my major required me to do 2 theses. I don't know, I forgot the plural is, theses. So yeah, one for the major, and then one was the honors thesis. So that's like something that I probably wouldn't have figured out on my own, but the counselors, of course they knew, like, yeah, look, you just this semester you do this first one and then you do the second one. And so I say that as by way of saying, like, take advantage of the resources of a large school. The counselors are there to help you. I think a lot of what people say about a large school is, oh, it's too much. You're not going to be able to, nobody's going to hold your hand. I actually think the opposite is true. I think because there's so many people, everyone thinks they need to do it on their own, and the resources are there. And I think, at least in my time, they're underutilized. So you should definitely, feel free to reach out to all the help that is there. And that'll help you, be successful.
Thank you. Mitzi or Christopher, if either of you want to also add a comment.
I'll go ahead and make a comment about this topic. While at Cal, I really utilized my major advisors to help me guide through the classes I wanted to take there. They were always willing to make an appointment in the political science department for me. I really relied on them at the next level. At community college, when I transferred, I was always going to my counselors there to making sure I had the correct classes to transfer to a UC. At Cal, at first I thought, it's such a huge school, they're not going to give me the same sort of attention, but it's not true. Cal is wonderful. You work with counselors, like Carla said, you work with your major advisors. They're always there to help answer any questions you have in future planning. And I really took advantage of that. I also had a sense of community of having a lot of international students at the iHouse, 680 students from 80 different countries, a lot of different ideas, a lot of different backgrounds. So I kind of, really practiced my active listening and learning about different backgrounds and cultures and people's experiences and what they wanted to do after school. And so I had an idea of either going to graduate school or finding my first career. But one interesting thing that I was able to utilize was the alumni network that Berkeley has in Tokyo. So it was my last semester and I was thinking about what did I want to do afterwards, what kind of job, what kind of industry, what kind of consulting firms. And I went ahead and contacted many alumni in the Tokyo area who were Cal alumni, of course, Cal graduates. And the thing you find is that Cal alumni are so welcoming, so friendly, as you can see from this panel. All of them want to talk about their experiences and want to know what you're doing. And so I must have had 10 or 12 conversations with Cal alumni in Tokyo, which is pretty unbelievable. But they really helped me try to find what would be a great career after my last semester at Cal. And so that's why I kind of got into consulting, thanks to a lot of their input and ideas. So yeah, different resources, even here at Cal, at the US, and even abroad when you're studying in a different country and a different school. So.
Thank you, Christopher. And I think Mitzi also wanted to comment.
Yeah, so for me, what was really important when I got to Cal was thinking about, one, connecting with the Latino community. I was the only Latina from my high school to get into Cal. So though I came in with other students that I was really good friends with, because I went to school with them since grade school, I think it felt very different for me to be at a campus, and I was looking for my Latino people there. So I was part of, like Carlos mentioned, the Raza Recruitment and Retention Center, which now is called Raíces, which is a really good organization that kind of touches all different realms of students in the Latino community. So it was a great way for me to get started and be involved on campus, to just meet other students that came from very similar backgrounds from me. But it was also important for me to think about the long term. Like, I wanted to be around like-minded friends, like-minded people that really valued education, that really understood kind of the difficulties of being first gen and all the struggles and everything we have to give up for ourselves and our families. So that's why I did join a Latina sorority while I was there, just because I knew that it was something that I could, one, gain mentorship. I being the oldest, I didn't know much about what was next. I had no idea what grad school was, and I didn't think about that until I was my senior year. So really being involved in a really tight-knit community that was focused with a lot of women that pretty much are in college. And that's what I kind of needed. I needed to be around other Latinas that are in college or that went to college to really guide me as not just a first generation student, but also how to be a first generation professional. There's a lot I didn't know. So I really wanted to be part of a community to do that. And that's how I did that through a sorority.
Thank you. I do want to lift one of the questions we received in the Q&A, which is, would you say Berkeley is diverse based on ethnicity of students, or would you say that our diversity comes from different ideas among students? So whoever wants to comment, we don't need everyone to comment as you feel prompted to.
I think I'll speak to it a little bit also as a staff person. So like I mentioned, I worked on campus for around 10 years. So I've met with a lot of different students that came with a lot of different questions. And I think Berkeley can fit everyone's needs. Sometimes you just have to look for it as well. So we do have folks that, are on campus and they're very academic focused, and that's what they really want to do. But then you have other folks that have different ideas of, they want to start a company. So they come in and they find people that want to start the same type of company. One thing that is really interesting about Cal is you can also create your own club. So we do have folks that, they want to find other like-minded people. Those clubs are already on campus. But if that's not the case and it's not in a structured way, you can find those other students and create that space for yourself too. So I think there's a lot of space to fit different folks' needs, be it something that's academic, be it something a little more social, be it something a little more professional, or some of your personal values. I think that's one thing that makes Berkeley very unique. Maybe the media sometimes portrays it in a very different way. I know with protests and different things like that, but I think campus really allows space for everyone to kind of be themselves while they're there. Even though it's a big place, you can find that small community that makes you feel connected and wanted and cared for while you're there.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that. It's such a large school that there's a group for everything you could possibly imagine. I was a part of the speech and debate team. I did intramural soccer, intramural basketball. There's Latino. I was part of a fraternity, but I wasn't part of a Latino fraternity. And my reasoning for that at the time was like, I'm from LA. I've grown up my entire life around other Latinos. I was like, I have never lived around non-Latinos. That was sort of the realization I had at the time. And I joined a fraternity to like kind of broaden my particular life experience. I still hung around a lot of Latinos, but yeah, I think there is a group for everything. There's classes you can create. If you, think, I forgot what they're called, decals. You want to create a class about XYZ topic. You just need some signatures and a faculty advisor, and there you go. You can create a class. So yeah, I think there's something for everything because it's such a large school. There's students from all over the world, all over the country, all over the state. From, I knew people that were just incredibly, incredibly rich that were friends of mine, and people like myself that were like, my mom's a housekeeper. I grew up in a single parent home. English was my second language. And we were all commingling and our friends together. And like, I recently went to one of their weddings, and it was like the most lavish and insane thing I've ever seen in my life. But that's the kind of environment that Cal puts you in terms of like a diversity of ideas and a diversity of experiences. And yeah, that's part of why I say that Cal was one of the best decisions I've ever made, is that, there's so many people that, you can find your crew basically. And nobody's going to define that for you. Whatever it is you're into, you're going to find it.
Thank you. I do also want to share, we are just under 10 minutes, but we welcome any questions in the Q&A or in the chat that students and family members might have for us. But we'll keep the chat going, the conversation going. So I definitely want to invite you all to share a little bit about how you found community on campus, or what was your favorite thing about Berkeley. So you can choose one or the other as you feel ready to speak.
I'll say one of the first memories that came to mind when you brought that question up, Maggie, was so coming from Oakland, college, at least for me, was very new. I came from a high school where there was a lot of violence. We had our own cop. Like we didn't really have textbooks for every class. I don't remember taking books home. So really like underprepared. But I was really proud of where I was from because it was very, very diverse. So I remember going to Cal and being in one of my ethnic studies courses I was taking. And then it ended up being that one of the GSIs, which is kind of like that helps the professors in the classrooms. He used to teach in Oakland. So we ended up talking, and he really liked my story. And he was like, oh my God, it's so great. He's like, do you want to do a research project? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know what research is. Like, that's not where I come from. I have no idea what that means. And it was actually a research about Oakland. So he was doing all this background work about this. So it was really exciting for me to be connected in a project and helping like professor do research about a community that it came from. So that was something that was really cool. It kind of came out of nowhere, but it really resulted from like me being comfortable and being able to connect with someone that really felt that there was something unique about my own story.
Thank you. See. If anyone else wants to comment, if not, we also have another question in the chat. Okay, so if any of you would like to share if being Hispanic or Latinx impacted not just your decisions around your career or your life at Berkeley, but maybe like the way it has shaped your post-Berkeley or pre-Berkeley life. And then as you speak, if any of you want to also share any advice that you might have for our future applicants.
I can chime in on this one. Yeah, I think that being, Latino has impacted my decision, has impacted actually every decision. I looked at my Berkeley education as a way, I looked at it as like, how can I give back? How can I help, communities basically that I came from, or like that were similar to the ones, that I came from. And so that prompted me, to work in education, and even the work I do now. I used to work for a labor union, for example, that represents, LA city and county employees. And a lot of what I did was getting better wages and working conditions for employees that, are people just like people in my family. I've worked for people that are for janitors, getting them, better wages and contracts, and et cetera. So I've really, it has really impacted every decision I've made career-wise. And I don't think that has to be that way for everyone, and it certainly isn't. But I think that I've definitely always tried to think of how the work that I do impacts positively on communities like the ones that I came from. And that, had led me from Berkeley to education to law to whatever the next steps are. I know a lot of other Berkeley alums that are they're judges, they're CEOs, they're engineers, they're doctors, whatever, researchers, whatever they are, they're teachers. They're also making a positive impact. So yeah, it definitely was a part of my decision making.
I can also chime in. I agree. Being Latina has definitely affected every decision I've made ever in my life, especially when it comes to my career, my education. And it hasn't been easy, no one in my family went to college. My older sister went to college, and that was about it. I didn't have anyone to really go to for that. And that's why in high school, I prepared myself by looking for resources. I did Upward Bound, which if you're in high school right now, go look for Upward Bound if you have that. Look for CLYLP if you're still able to do that. And I did those things because I knew my parents couldn't help me. And it wasn't because they didn't want to help me, it's because they really couldn't help me. And, switching into tech was probably one of the scariest decisions I've ever made. Again, because no one in my family works in tech. But I think it was a decision that I needed to make for myself because, it was my passion. I wanted to work in fashion and tech. And then also, I think it was a decision that I knew I had to make for my younger brother. My younger brother wants to be an engineer. And I took a class at Berkeley for coding just so I could learn how to code and help him. So.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, so maybe as we wrap up, if any of you have any advice for the students who are currently undergoing the application process, maybe any tips that you might have for them. And then we also have Amanda and Cecilia here who can answer any admission specific questions for students here, or questions around financial aid or other specific programs. But definitely to our panel, if you have any last final advice for our students here around the application process, or how to best go through this or prepare for it if they're not seniors quite yet or preparing to transfer.
Yeah, something I will say, I think in the Latino community, we're very humble, and everything we do is not a me, it's a we. We think everybody except ourselves. But I think the personal statement is a really great opportunity to kind of transition that mindset. So, I've worked with a lot of high school students, and I've helped students with readmissions and different applications. And I think the biggest thing that I see that students in the Latino community are doing is they're talking about great things about their abuelitas, their tias. And I was like, great. I read your essay and I was like, I'm gonna let your tia in. I'm sorry, I know you applied, but your tia sounds awesome. So I think I would really recommend it as you work on your personal statement. Think about how many I statements are in there. If there's not one I statement, you might want to look into that document again, have someone else help you read it, because you've done great things, and great means a lot of different things, I think, to the Berkeley campus, and that's what makes it so unique. So really have someone, and maybe someone that doesn't know you. I know it's been very vulnerable, some family members. My sister applied to Cal. I didn't read her personal statement. That was very personal to her, but we made sure other people read that about her, just because you want to share your stories with folks. And just to briefly, I know there was a question about undocumented students. I worked with the Undocumented Student Program for many years. It's a really great resource on campus to support students that are undocumented, students under DACA, them and their families. So I would just really encourage you to check out their website and see some of the resources they have available there, if that's something that pertains to you or some of your peers, and that's a deciding factor.
Thank you, Mitzi. If anyone else has any other advice for our students.
Yeah, similar advice to Mitzi is focusing on the personal statement. One of the best things that someone ever did with me is give me honest advice on my personal statement. someone told me like my personal statement was basically trash. And, you know, I think a lot of people, when you give them a personal statement, a lot of people will just, you know, yeah, it's great, you know, pat you on the back, but you really need somebody who's going to give you honest feedback. And I'm thankful to that person for telling me that my personal statement was trash, because I revised it and it's much better. And it actually had a lot to do with the, you know, kind of what Mitzi just said. I was talking about other people and I'm like, what about you? You know, talk about yourself, talk about your accomplishments. And it's great that your abuelita did this, but she's not applying to Berkeley. So yeah, you know, I would encourage you to seek people out who are just not going to pat you on the back, but are going to give you constructive feedback. And if they, you know, be blunt with them, be like, look, if there's something you don't like, tell me, because I'd rather you, my friend, tell me that there's something you don't like rather than the admissions committee just be like, next.
Thank you, everyone. I want to be mindful and respectful of everyone's time. So we're very thankful for all of you joining us. Thank you to our panelists for being here with us. We know there's a lot you can be doing in your busy lives, but you're volunteering to help support our next generation. And I do want to say, you know, to our students that it may feel like a daunting process. It may feel like you're all alone, but you know, just right now in the chat, Cecilia shared different resources. Cecilia and Amanda are staff members of the university. So they're examples of folks that you can reach out to if you have questions or need support, or can connect you to people like ourselves, alumni who are interested in supporting students. So you're not alone in this process. I think you heard a lot of testaments of people who are out there who may share similar narratives to yours. So please know that, you know, we do look forward, if Berkeley's the right fit for you, to welcome you into the Golden Bear family, and hopefully someday see you as alumni serving on this panel. So with that said, we wish you all a good evening. And again, thank you all, and go Bears. Buenas noches a todos.